All right, everyone, welcome back into the channel. It's Ryan Ripken. I got Rocco DeSangro with me, and look, it's been a very eventful weekend, but hey, on the field, we're not going to talk about that. What's actually going on that's really caught the eye during the All-Star break is the MLB draft just happened. The first round just happened on Sunday night. So we thought, why don't we reach out to somebody that has the insights to what's going on, and specifically with the Orioles' first pick, Rock, in this year's draft. He's a sports radio host down for WSJS in North Carolina. So without further ado, let's bring on our friend Josh Graham. And Josh, can you hear us okay?
Ryan, Rock, what's happening, you guys?
Oh, yeah, not much, just enjoying it. And why don't you, for the moment, Josh, the other connection here is the fact that not only do you know these players, specifically the first Oriole here in Honeycut, but you are an actual Orioles fan on top of it.
Oh, yeah. I usually see my voice usually isn't as deep as it is right now. I'm pretty hoarse because the last 4 days I've spent out at Camden Yards with my dad watching Orioles baseball. I was only supposed to be there for 3 games, to be honest. But when you get outscored 18-2 from Thursday through Saturday, that going to that 11:30 a.m. game yesterday seemed a lot more appealing. And it didn't feel that way for about 20 minutes between the top of the 9th and the bottom, but thanks to Greensboro native Cedric Mullen, shout out to Campbell University, roll humps as they say over there. He gets the hit. Alex Verdugo takes a step in rather than a step back, and all is well in the world, at least for a day.
Yeah, I mean, you then right now, so people understand, Josh is not the reason why the Orioles were losing those games. You can say that he helped because he stayed. The Orioles ended that streak, but I'm glad that they did. The Orioles are going to stay in first place here as they move into the All-Star break. And then, Rock, why don't you just even loop this together? We found Josh even more because of our friend Jeff Arnold.
Yeah, Jeff Arnold just dropped a quote on X, and he's like, my buddy Josh Graham, who's a drive time radio host down in North Carolina, he said this about Vance Honeycutt, and it was along the lines of him being one of the better talents that you've seen come through the region since Trey Turner. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you elaborate more on that tweet exactly and why you said something like that?
I said he was the most clutch hitter I've seen around here since Trey Turner in 2013, because that NC State team hadn't been to Omaha in decades, and Trey Turner lifted that team on his shoulders offensively to get to that point. And that's exactly what Vance Honeycutt did. North Carolina was known as being one of the best college baseball programs in the 2000s with guys like Matt Harvey and Dustin Ackley and others. I'm sure Ryan Ripken knows how revered North Carolina was at that time. But since then, they hadn't been to a College World Series in 6 years. And when you look at what Vance Honeycutt did for North Carolina to get them over the hump, to get them back to Omaha, it's 28 home runs. A lot of people want to focus on the strikeout rate. And I heard Matt Blood, who, by the way, is a Tar Heel, last night, the Orioles vice president for player development and with their scouting, talking about, the strikeout rate is a concern, something to worry about. Sure. But when you get past the first 5-6 picks in any draft, every prospect has flaws. You should get excited about the pros too. And the pros are 28 home runs when nobody had more than 20 on the rest of the roster. You talk about 28 stolen bases in 62 games and a guy who's slugging over 700. That's who gives you really good play in center field as well. The plays that this guy was making when it mattered most, it reminded me of Trey, and it's not something I say lightly when you consider our region has produced so many good players. I currently talk to you from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where literally 5 minutes down the road from where I sit is a baseball program that produced 3 top 10 picks in this year's draft. So I don't say that lightly when I say that about Vance Honeycutt.
And I'm glad you brought that up because, look, I think in the draft, you never know. Players are always going to have their flaws. But at the same time, I thought when Honeycutt dropped, because my neighbor is a big Tar Heel, Josh, and he was talking to me about where do you think he's going to go? And I'm thinking, I think he's going to go higher in the first round, the upside, the power, the tools, right? He has the tools. And when he dropped the 22 for the Orioles, And I heard people complaining about, oh, well, why don't they go get pitching? The Orioles looked at the board and said, we think that this player has the ability to be a foundational piece moving forward. And how can you not get excited about a player? And I want to ask you about some of the other players in the region down the road here. And Walt, by the way, is great. And Matt Harvey, Josh, I actually met him when I visited the Tar Heels back, goodness, might have been 2008, 2009. Yeah. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, because they went to the College World Series that year in 2009 as well.
Yep. Well, so my mind is still working. My memory's still good. So let's talk about that with Honeycut. I think the biggest thing you just mentioned about with clutch hitting and talking about, okay, the strikeout rate's one thing, but the moment's not too big for him. It looks like to me when you're watching him, he's the definition. I know this term gets used a lot, but to me, he's just an absolute gamer that seems to rise to any occasion for his team. And that's something that not every player can have that type of it factor.
Another thing is polish. I think a big overarching story from last night's Major League Baseball draft has to be, at the very top at least, 13 of the first 15 picks in the draft came from college baseball. And tomorrow night, we're going to watch a Major League All-Star game that was started by a guy who last year was pitching in the College World Series. And that is a huge difference versus where we were even 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. 2015, for example, if you look at just the top 15 picks in the draft, Ryan, 8 of the top 15 came from high school. The next year, 9 of the 15 came from high school. 13 of the top 15 came from college baseball. So a huge winner was college baseball in general last night. And we're watching in real time the draft look a lot less like a developmental draft, like we're seeing, say, with the NBA. Oh, let's draft this guy. In 6 years, we might hear from him again. And it's turning more, not as good, as close to what we're seeing with the NFL, but closer to that, where you're drafting players that you could see in the foreseeable future help you. So I get, with that in mind, Oriole fans saying, well, why don't you draft pitching? Well, who knows 2-3 years down the line? I mean, if Heston Kjerstad's going to be there and, we'll figure out the rest of that. Colton Cowser is going to be in the outfield. Who's to say Anthony Santander 2-3 years from now is still going to be on the team? You don't know. And that's why you draft the best player available on the board. And to your point, all the people that I was talking to said, Vance Honeycutt's a top 15 pick. And if you told me whether or not you wanted to bet on him being a top 10 pick or dropping outside of the top 20, which one would you take? I'd say it's more likely that he's a top 10 pick than falls outside the top 20. The fact that he's available at number 22 for the Orioles, it's a ready-made fit. And you get the video of Mike Elias last night talking about you're our type of player to Vance Honeycutt. And I think anybody who follows this baseball team and has any idea of what Vance Honeycutt did during the tournament can see how those two things mesh together.
Josh, with that being said, getting Vance Honeycutt at pick 22, the Orioles are not used to drafting this late in the first round. Under Mike Elias, they really haven't drafted outside of the top 5, unless you consider, Enrique Bradfield Jr. last season when they got him just right outside the top 15. So when we talk about Vance Honeycutt, talking about his game and what he brings to the table, years from now, all right, we're looking back at this draft. Take your Orioles hat off, because I know you're an Orioles fan, for a second for me. Or put it on, whatever you want to do.
Like 3 of them behind me here.
Exactly. 5 years from now, looking back at the 2024 draft, looking at all the picks in the first round, could Vance Honeycutt be the steal of the draft?
Very well could. I mean, the example I gave with Trey Turner, if you go back and redraft the draft 10 years ago in 2014, he's the number 1 pick. And I got news for you. He wasn't taken in the top 10. I think he was taken 12th or 13th that year. And that just speaks to how, important the scouting department is. And the track record of this scouting department is very strong. And specifically the scouts that look at this region. This region is so important when you consider how many top teams come from the state of North Carolina. 15 minutes in a town called Kernersville is East Forsyth High School, where a kid named Connor Norby came up. And then he went to my alma mater, East Carolina University. They didn't draft him in the first round, and we see how good of a prospect he's become. And I mentioned Cedric Mullins earlier as a find many years ago that Baltimore has been able to capitalize on. This is a first-round draft pick, but you should view it differently, as it's not one of those picks like Kerstad or Jackson or some of the others that kind of are ready-made top 5 picks. You know who the top tier guys are in each draft. This is where, after you get past the first 5, 6, 7 picks in the draft, you got to lean on your scouting department. And Baltimore has one of the more proven scouting departments based on what we've seen this Orioles organization become the last couple of years.
I would 1,000% agree with that. And for everyone saying that the Orioles are tanking, they're only getting better because of the top picks. Well, we're not going to, sugarcoat it and say when you pick high, you have the ability to get some top jewel of players, right? The diamonds that you already for sure that are shining bright. But the other part of it too, is Josh, is what we've seen is that not every top pick works out. That is what I think people are missing here. And in that draft where the Orioles got Adley Rutschman, they also picked even better getting Gunnar Henderson in the 2nd round. So there's way more to it. There's no guarantee slam dunk. It's just when you're a higher pick, they have a better feeling at the time that you're going to project to get to the big leagues, but it's not a set in stone. So since we brought up the steal of the draft and we talked about Honeycutt, we'll talk about the region here in a second, but you're down there and we know about the power. We know about the potential. We know about the tools. What is something then that fans out there or baseball fans, Oriole fans would not know about Vance Honeycutt when it comes to either his game or to him as an individual that kind of would make people sit there and go, well, you know what? That's just another reason of why he's special.
I'm going to reinforce another word I said earlier in speaking broadly about where college baseball players and college baseball prospects have been today versus where they might have been 10 years ago. And that's polish. Vance Honeycutt, go and listen to interviews that he's done. He sounds like a guy who's been in the pros for 4 or 5 years. And he gets it. It goes back to the understanding, the stage not being too big. Go and look at the hits that he had. It's not just the fact that he had a game-winning hit in the College World Series against Virginia and Arkansas, but if you want to talk about exit velo, he hit it really hard in order to do that. The home run against West Virginia, I don't think still has landed. And then he'll do in the same inning in the 9th to save a run, he'll be diving in center field to make a great catch, as he's been doing for multiple years. This is the 3rd year that Vance Honeycutt has been a player that Tar Heel fans have pointed to and said, wow, that's a future star. That's a guy who's going to be playing in the major leagues one day. And when you see the work ethic, what coaches like Scott Forbes say about him, and you listen to the way the guy speaks, he sounds like a pro. And in the NIL age that we're talking about in college sports, it's not that far-fetched to say, with management of money and funds already, that he borderline already is a pro prospect. And the production should really excite Oriole fans when you have the combination of power that he provides and the speed element that he brings too. If he cuts down those strikeouts, then I think he is the steal of the draft. And I think Harold Reynolds during the draft was spot on when he said he has the most tools of anybody that was taken in the 1st round.
Love to hear that. Love to hear that. I think everyone loves to hear that, and that's just why we wanted you on, Josh. You're getting everyone fired up here. Rock, take it from here.
I'm fired up. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. And wait, time out for a second. Can we get that Hawaiian? Can you show people that Oriole fandom here for a second?
I need to. I was there this weekend, and I had a friend of mine who felt badly for me because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus with the Orioles team store or whatnot, but you can't buy online anything but white jerseys or City Connect jerseys. So I go into the team store wanting to get myself an Adley jersey in either orange or in the road gray. And they said, no, you have to order that off the kiosk here and we'll mail it to you in 2 weeks. So I needed something to wear to these games. And I had a friend of mine who said, while you wait for your jersey, as long as you wear it on Ryan Ripken Show or on your show, which you can find on YouTube, by the way, search The Drive with Josh Graham. He gave me one of these Hawaiian shirts. And I think this is like a Hawaiian shirt from 2-3 years ago. This wasn't even last year's model.
So it's vintage.
Yeah, you're lucky to have one of those, by the way, because the lines at the games when they give them away, they're longer than Black Friday sales. Like,
I was at one last year and I sold mine for $50 outside the gate. I had it in my hand and a guy said, "I'll give you $50 for that." And I'm like, "Oh, sure, can have it."
Man. Yeah, it's a hot commodity, man.
Are you saying that I could have sold it for more? I made a poor choice. Is that what you're telling me?
Probably. Yeah. Yes. But you know what? We're just going to let that, we're good. We're good here.
Got it.
I want to continue as you put on your Orioles shirt because, we know you're an O's fan. Talking about, so you've watched this team over the years. You've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. More good, more recently. Mm-hmm. When you see Vance Honeycutt get drafted, I mean, the first thing that'll pop up to a lot of people that watch the highlights is the big play ability that this dude has. But when you're watching him and when you're covering him and when you're down there in North Carolina, seeing his game up close, front row seat to that, why does he fit in so well with the Orioles organization?
Just because I know this is a guy that's going to understand he's one key cog of the puzzle where he has no problem integrating into a system. And when I see guys get drafted, whether it be the 3 guys at Wake Forest that are taken in the top 10, whether it be Trey Savage from my alma mater taken by Toronto at number 20, or certainly in Vance Honeycutt's case, what I'm rooting for is just guys heading into the right situation. And this is a perfect situation for Vance to step into. 1, you're likely going to be playing for a winner, but 2, I don't envision there being the same level of blockage for a guy like that to be able to elevate the way we're seeing in the infield right now with Jackson Holliday, Connor Norby being there. And okay, well, you have Ramon Urias and you have Jordan Westberg and you have all these others that are right there as well who are clawing for playing time too. It's not unrealistic to envision a Oriole outfield 3 years from now that features the likes of Heston Kjerstad, Colton Cowser, and maybe Vance Honeycutt 3 years from now. And who knows, if he's more polished than I'm even giving him credit for, that could happen sooner than even the next 3 years.
Yeah, it's funny also that they say that the Orioles have a type. Like, it's the photos going around of Jackson and Adley and Gunnar and Heston, and now Honeycutt all looking the same. And it is funny where they're like, you got to be kidding me. They have a model. But I think the model to me is just these are really damn good players. Who cares if they actually might have a similar look? They are very, very talented players. And you're right. For a team or an organization that's developing players, especially hitters, as well as anybody in Major League Baseball right now, the tides have turned here in Baltimore. This team's going to be competing for a long time. This is a great spot to be in for him. And so I'm excited to see how it all works out. Now let's switch gears for one second. Hold on. We were not going to shift gears. Here we go.
Let me hammer one thing further, though. Because I do feel like with North Carolina being a top 5 team and North Carolina, again, being that program a lot of people associate with being one of the better programs out there, there could be the concern from people to say, was he really that good, or was he just part of a really good team that made him look better than he was? Go look at the numbers and look at the number of players that North Carolina gets drafted this year. It's not like the 2000s teams that had, again, Harvey and Ackley and dudes all over the place, even 10 years ago, producing guys when they went to the College World Series, or 6 or 7 years ago, producing guys. Like, when you look at the offensive productivity for a team that was a national seed, a top 5 seed going into the tournament and making it to Omaha, Vance Honeycutt was carrying a larger load than anybody I've seen on a very good team around here, an Omaha quality team, than I've seen since Trey Turner. That's the piece that reminded me of Trey Turner, the clutch hitting, but also the load he was able to carry successfully to get North Carolina to high aspirations and achieve some.
I think that's great to point out, because the people do want to say, are they a product of the environment and team, or is it the player themselves? And that's the thing that I noticed. And I'm glad you brought that up. UNC is a team that wants to get back to that rise. They have the history in the program. It's got a lot of talented players, but you're right. It hadn't been what they've hoped for over the last couple decades, was hoping to get back to it. But Honeycutt, that's the name that always pops out. And the guy that you saw in any moment or highlight, and yeah, just highlights who's coming up big, who's the guy that seems to do everything at the right time. It's Vance Honeycutt. So I am ecstatic for him as an Oriole. I'm ecstatic he's going to get the opportunity. I love he has the ties down to the North Carolina region. So can we flip to the other side? And I know that some people are going to go, well, Ryan, I don't care about the Nationals. Well, I started my career with the Nationals, by the way. I got a lot of love for the organization still, and I got a lot of love for Wake Forest because Gavin Sheets, Josh, former Demon Deacon, is one of my best friends. Shout out the Fighting Gavin Sheets out there in Chicago. Rough year for the boys there, but that's a whole different discussion. But the Wake Forest has turned into a juggernaut. They produce a lot of talent. And Walt, I love him. And that was one regret that I had, Josh, was that I wish before they became this great program that they are, that was a school that I was deciding between you and me and whoever else was. If I could have gone back, I would have gone to Wake Forest out of high school. But
I'm Walter and you like that. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, like, he's a great guy, but on top of it, he's a one-on-one person. But on top of it, you're seeing what they've developed. They were trying to be ahead of the game. And then now ahead of the game with the pitching labs and trying to enhance what they could do with what they had. And now it's turning into, they're just producing player after player. I mean, we just talked about, they have 3 players in the top 10. Let's talk about that 10th pick then being Seaver King, who's going to the Nats. And I'll tell you what, if you're a fan in the region of Maryland, the Nats are on the up and up too. I mean, James Wood, a guy that's a local product to the region, is the real deal. CJ Abrams in the trade, also great trade by the Washington Nationals. But talk to us about Seaver King and how he can then be another, building block for this Nationals franchise, which is looking to get back to being a dominant force in the National League.
Well, Wake Forest had a lot of expectations going into this year. They were preseason number 1 after last year. It was LSU and Wake Forest that had separated as being the 2 best teams, and they met in Omaha in a do-or-die game to get to the championship series, and it was Rhett Lauder against Paul Skeens, and they both threw a combined 15 scoreless innings, and the game was tied at 0 going to extras before Tommy White of LSU hit the walk-off home run to win. So expectations were high for Wake Forest, but you lost a couple of first-round draft picks in Rhett Lauder, who went to Cincinnati, and you lose Brock Wilken, who is Wake Forest's all-time career home run leader. You lose him too. So how do you replace those guys? Well, you look into the transfer portal. And I think it's fair to say Tom Walter, the aforementioned Wake coach that you almost committed to, did a pretty good job replacing guys, because the guy you replaced Rhett Lauder with was some guy named Chase Burns, who was the best pitcher in college baseball this year, blew away all of Rhett Lauder's single season records from a season ago, now joining Rhett Lauder with Cincinnati with the 2nd overall pick. And then you get the Seaver King, who was at a small school in North Carolina called Wingate University, that nobody really had heard of a year ago. I remember when they transferred, I'm like, Wingate has baseball? Oh, okay. And he comes to Wake Forest, and he's 3rd team All-American. Let me say that again. Not 3rd team All-ACC, 3rd team All-American. And when I talk to people inside the Wake program, Nick Kurtz was the 3rd of those top 10 picks that Wake Forest produced, number 4 to the Oakland A's. Are we still calling them the Oakland A's, or we call them Sacramento?
Yeah, they're who knows?
Yeah, exactly. So he's been a polished player the last few years that kind of what you have, and he probably will elevate very quickly up to the major leagues in Sacramento or Vegas or whatever we're calling them. Seaver King, though, I've been told might have the highest upside of any position player on Wake Forest this past year. Now, potential's a funny thing, because you don't know exactly where you're going to end up. You're going to be better than where you're at right now, and where you're at right now is already pretty good. But what exactly that ends up being is a bit of a question mark. And he could play 3rd base. He could play in the outfield. He did a lot of things for Wake this past year, and he deserves a lot of credit for Wake not having a seismic drop-off after losing a lot of key players from that College World Series team a year ago.
Josh, last thing we got, and then we'll get you out of here. I know you got a show to do today. Shout out to you for working on a Monday when, I'm off. Ryan is, doing his own thing.
If Alex Verdugo took 2 steps back rather than 2 steps forward, I might not be on the show today. I might not be back in the state of North Carolina. I might never go back to Camden Yards. Thank Cedric Mullins and Alex Verdugo for all this happening today.
Without them, you're not wearing the Hawaiian shirt on the Ryan Ripken Show today. So shout out to those guys for just making everything. It's magical, honestly.
Yeah.
So I just want to circle back and ask you one last thing just about Vance Honeycutt.
Yeah.
So watching the MLB draft last night, the first round, I believe an analyst called him the most feast or famine player in this draft. Now take that how you will, and I'm sure people will, but specifically because we touched on it, but the K rate. All right, you see it. His freshman season wasn't great. Sophomore season, it goes down. And then junior season, it pops back up. Not fantastic. Matt Blood talked about it as well. Should there be any realistic cause for concern just looking at his K rate from college? Or are you on the side of, okay, this guy's definitely going to figure it out when he gets up to the bigs?
I think calling him the highest feast and famine player, I think, is misguided just because when you have high school players that are still going in the first round, that's a lot more feast or famine than what you see if you have a larger sample size of what somebody is. I'm glad you point out that in past years, it wasn't as much of an issue. But, I'll use an example of currently with the Orioles when talking about the importance, not just of scouting, but of development. I had a chance to watch Jackson Holliday a week ago when he was in Durham, and everybody saw what happened when he was brought up to the Orioles back in April. He got behind in a lot of counts. He wasn't very patient at the plate. And when I saw him the couple games I watched, what stood out to me, what was staggering to me, was just seeing how patient he was. And I think he walked 3 times in one of the games that I saw. Now, again, that's as small of a sample size as you're going to find. But it just goes to show you that the strikeout rate might not be about an inability to catch up with certain pitches or to hit breaking balls or whatever it is. There are some situations where that might be the case, but it could just be about what pitches to swing at, which ones not to, about overall patience at the plate. And it would seem to me some of the success stories we've seen with the Orioles and how they've developed and turning into big prospects would lead me to be more optimistic about that being fixed than I would be if Vance Honeycutt were drafted into other situations. So this would be a scenario, given what we've seen from this scouting department, from Mike Elias, what we've seen from this developmental staff, which goes down to Buck Britton and AAA and all the way down the line, they more than deserve the benefit of the doubt to fix these types of things, especially when you're talking about a prospect that, again, it's more surprising that he fell outside the top 20 than it would have been if he were taken in the top 10. That's something to be excited about. And it's not the highest feast or famine guy, considering what we saw was so positive, what the positives were there on such a high stage in college baseball and in such a large sample versus some of these high school prospects.
I think that's a great answer. I think that phrase gets thrown out a lot where, look, everyone you're trying to project who the next guy is going to be. How good are they going to be? And every player is going to have a certain level of uncertainty. And I think that's the part where I'm glad that you brought up. We're finding out that Honeycutt is a polished player. He's got tools. Yes, he has things to work on, but so do a lot of players that are getting drafted. But above all, he's a gamer. When the game's moments need someone to come through, he has that it factor in. Now it's going to be, can he continue that on? I think we're all in agreement. We're ecstatic that he's in the right place in Baltimore. Last thing before we get you out of here, this is the fun part. What, you got one more thought?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, first off, remind everyone where they can get all the Josh content that they want. Obviously, you're on X, and I think it's just, if I'm doing it correctly here, or I'll let you plug it. It's just
Josh Graham Show or on Jeff Arnold's Twitter. Consider my text with Jeff end up on his Twitter handle, which is great. And you can find me on YouTube searching The Drive with Josh Graham. I've enjoyed this a lot more than you've enjoyed talking to me because I have all these thoughts and feelings I'm able to get out when my show starts in just a little bit, it's going to be talking about Charlotte Hornets basketball for like 3 hours, when all I'm thinking in the back of my mind is, somebody ask me about Cedric Mullins already. Can someone do that? Can someone ask me about Vance Honeycutt? I'm pumped. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. I love the passion. We hear it. Well, then on this case, this is a controversial topic here. And
let's go.
It's brought to you by our friends over at Stuggies. And I don't know, while you're up there by the chance, did you have a chance to try a crab mac and cheese dog?
I know, but that sounds like amazing. Like that sounds like sex. That sounds like food porn. That's amazing.
It is. And just to show you that real quickly, we're going to share it on the screen real quickly.
Whoa.
So there we go. If I can zoom in, I don't even know how to zoom in on this computer, but there it is. That's what we're rocking with there. Hey, look, I consider this a specialty dog, and you know what? It is special. It is amazing. I'm a fan of it. But if I can figure out the screen real quickly, here we go. Josh, this is the question that's sweeping the nation here. If you're going to a ballpark, right, and you're getting a hot dog, I consider the specialty dog, that's like toppings. We're not looking for toppings. We're looking about condiments.
Sure.
Josh Graham, what are you putting on your dog condiment-wise?
I'm a simplest. It's ketchup and mustard, because if it's just ketchup, you're probably 12.
Hey.
You're probably 12 and need to grow up. Like you probably think wrestling's real. Oh wait, did I just say that? Sorry. I love wrestling. I by the way, like my dad's a close family friend, or used to be, with Macho Man Randy Savage. Like we got, like wrestling. I don't want to offend anybody, but if you have the hot dog with just ketchup on it, you might be a serial killer. I don't know what else to say.
Get him off the screen, Rip. Get him off the screen.
Oh, so what do you
wrestling's not real? Are you kidding me? My whole life's a lie.
Well, okay, so real quick, what do you think about just having a plain hot dog?
Not as bad as just having ketchup.
What do you think about having the skin cut off your plain hot dog and your mom feeding it to you when you're 5 years old?
Okay, same level as just having ketchup on it. Again, it's if you're having it that way, it means that you're a child or you haven't grown up. You're probably one of those adults that go to Disney by themselves.
That's you, Rip. That is
okay.
You.
Wait, time out. So I was a child and had the skin come off the hot dog. Yeah. You're a grown adult and eat your hot dog with just ketchup. So what we're talking about is that you are still a kid.
Sounds like we're paddling in the same boat there, buddy.
No, we're not. No, we're not. See, this is what you've done, Josh. I
used to eat mustard sandwiches as a kid. I still get picked fun at, but then I turned 8.
Oh, no.
See, there you go, Rock. There you go. Hey, Josh, I appreciate you. We're going to have this on. We're going to need you on the live show then, because our audience would love to see you live and talk about this. But you wear that shirt proudly. We're going to plug everything you have going on. That's at Josh Graham Show. We are going to plug everything you have going on YouTube. Anything else before we let you get out of here?
No, I'm just glad my voice made it all the way through this. I sound like North Carolina's basketball coach, Hubert Davis, who gets pretty fired up. And most noteworthily, when he was in a Final Four game, this goes back to me having to be on the live show. He started a movement around here by yelling at Tracy Wolfson, "Live action, Tracy! Live action!" That's what we need to welcome. Live action with Ryan Ripken.
Live action with Ryan Ripken, Rocco DeSangro, and Josh Graham. But Josh, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon.
Maybe a mustard sandwich, Josh, will help your voice out going forward. So appreciate you joining, man.
Thanks, guys.